I am Kevin Munoz, and I'm an artist in Austin. I like Progress, Texas because it encapsulates the voice and opinions of many that don't typically have an outlet for their voice and opinion.
It's Thursday, April 2nd, 2026, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch, rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. Progress Texas amplifies progressive values, leaders, and actions through our no-paywall podcasts and digital media. We've built a statewide audience and reach millions of Texans monthly, and that's made possible by folks like you who invest in independent progressive media by Texans for Texans. Huge thanks to Francis Ferguson, Franziska Nicholson, and Scott Lyford for their ongoing sustaining support. We appreciate it. Let's flash back this morning, and it hurts, I know, to the 2023 and 2025 Texas legislative sessions, when passing a private school voucher program was the top priority of Republicans, who centered their argument for funneling your tax dollars for generations earmarked for public schools to ensure that all of our kids could get a good start into private and frequently parochial schools. Their arguments centered around rescuing low-income children trapped in underperforming or unsafe neighborhood schools. That the voucher plan would indeed provide a life raft via which cycles of intergenerational poverty might finally be broken. It was being done, our Republican leaders insisted on behalf and for the benefit of the poorer, frequently non-white children of Texas who just needed a leg up. Progressives and Democrats, of course, saw all of this for what it plainly was, an opportunity for wealthy Texans to escape the obligation of supporting an established societal good and instead direct their part of the pie back into their own mouths via discounts on the private school tuition bills they had already chosen to pay. And as the application deadline for the first private school voucher run has passed, the reality begins to arrive. Jaden Edison at the Texas Tribune says preliminary data from the Texas Comptroller shows that while the public school population in Texas is 24% white and 60% low income, of the 256,700 initial voucher applicants, 45% are white and 73% are already attending private school or homeschooling. Demand exceeds the initial $1 billion budget of the Texas private school voucher program, so a lottery will determine which of these families are finally chosen, and that's subject to a tiered priority system, with students with disabilities first and families earning less than 200% of the federal poverty level, roughly $66,000 per year, second. But ultimately, let's recall, there's nothing in the Texas voucher law forcing any private school to accept any student they don't wish to serve for any reason they choose. Private school admission policies will ultimately dictate who can actually use any funding the state might fork over. So that statistic will be even more telling when it arrives this next fall. We made the bold prediction yesterday that Governor Greg Abbott would fall immediately in line with Donald Trump's voter suppression tactic of placing severe limits on mail-in voting, and it turns out that was a pretty safe bet. James Osborne at the Houston Chronicle says our governor has obediently signaled support for Trump's order, framing the move as somehow making it, quote, easier to vote, unquote, which it clearly does not. Several Democratic states and various voting rights advocacy groups have already threatened lawsuits to block the order. And note that all of this is happening as Trump continues pushing the Senate to pass the Save America Act, which would add onerous requirements of proof of citizenship for both registration and the act of voting itself. Governor Abbott's not the only Trump lapdog here, of course. Ken Paxton is genuflecting Trumpward on this as well, while over here, Texas Democratic Party Chair Kendall Scudder puts it plainly, quote, voting should be simple, not a road trip. If you have to drive hours and bring paperwork just to register, that's not freedom, that's suppression, unquote. At Progress Texas, we urge you, dear listener, to keep up with all of this and to be prepared to overcome whatever obstacle and his followers might try to put in your way between now and November. Make a voting plan now and be ready to modify that plan if you need to. There's been much theorizing about who exactly the ICE agents terrorizing American neighborhoods all year actually are under those masks, and there's been initial work in finding out. New coverage from Wired says the deployment of BORTAC and BORSTAR, paramilitary special operations units of the U.S. Border Patrol, into U.S. cities during Trump 2.0 represents a fundamental shift for these units from border enforcement to urban occupation. These agents are often military veterans from elite units like the Army Rangers with backgrounds in overseas combat from American forever wars, including Afghanistan and Iraq. Unlike traditional domestic police officers, these soldiers are trained for high-risk desert rescues, narcotics interdiction, and war zone tactics, skills that are a fundamentally bad match for civilian law enforcement. Records indicate a pattern of intense escalation and highly questionable conduct among these specialized personnel deployed into a wide range of American cities, including Minneapolis, Los Angeles, New Orleans, and others, including Chicago, where a wired study of over 144 use-of-force incidents found that BORTAC and BORSTAR agents, who comprised only about a quarter of the full federal deployment into Chicago, were responsible for the most violent confrontations, including the use of canine attack dogs on bystanders, mass pepper spraying of crowds of onlookers, and firing tear gas into residential neighborhoods in one instance while a children's Halloween parade was being held. Wired also got into the personal records of these agents, frequently finding histories that would likely lead to most municipal police departments to take a hard pass. Records of domestic violence, sexual assault, and questionable uses of force in prior law enforcement roles are common among these guys. Notable to us here in Texas, one high-ranking agent involved in the Chicago surge was not only one of the officers standing around during the Uvalde school shooting, he's also known for publicly posting racist garbage in online gun forums. These are the troops behind those masks. Their internal oversight remains largely shielded from public view, and none of them have yet faced criminal charges for their conduct, at least not yet. That's part of what you're voting about come November. Turns out that generally, come November, the tech bro oligarchs behind the explosion of AI are going to be voting Republican, and a great many of them are already voting that way with their checkbooks. Olivia Borgula at the Texas Tribune says AI-linked super PACs have emerged as a massive financial force in the 2026 Texas congressional midterms, having thus far injected over $2.8 million to support candidates who align with the industry's vision, which it turns out is a MAGA vision. The primary beneficiaries of this new AI campaign funding windfall are a slate of Texas Republican candidates, including Chris Gober, Jessica Steinman, and Jace Yarbrough, all known as MAGA warriors, seeking to frame AI development as a matter of national security, a race against competing countries, in particular China. One need look no further than who's signing these checks to understand these goals. Palantir's Joe Lonsdale of Austin, as we've reported, pretty much the top right-wing technocrat of Texas lately, and OpenAI's Greg Brockman, who's written some fat checks indeed to Donald Trump, stacking up to about $25 million since last year. These guys are specifically looking to support candidates who will not only allow but support the fully unfettered expansion of AI infrastructure once elected, including the development of a single national regulatory framework regarding AI that would allow Congress to override individual state regulations and help these companies secure the energy infrastructure necessary to maintain AI dominance. Water supplies and consumer energy needs placed a distant second. Republicans will help these dark Enlightenment techno-libertarian oligarchs essentially take over the world, including your neighborhood. Yet another thing to keep in mind when heading to the polls this fall. AI and the multiple threats it poses to our environment are certain to be discussed next week, as Progress Texas is proud to be a part of the Texas Nature and Clean Energy Summit. This will be hosted by our friends at Environment Texas on Tuesday, April 7th at the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center in Austin. We're going to be hearing from an esteemed group of leaders, including State Rep Aaron Zwiener, Dr. Michael Weber of UT Austin, Cyrus Reed of Sierra Club's Lone Star chapter, Andy Sansom, longtime executive director of the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, Stacy Ortego of the National Wildlife Federation, and lots more. See the link in the show notes to RSVP. Important to note, there are not one but two Texas elections approaching next month: municipal city-level elections on May 2nd and the statewide primary runoffs on May 26th. Your last day to be registered for the first of those, the municipal elections, happens to be today, Thursday, April 2nd. Early voting in that election starts on April 20th. As for the midterm runoffs, registration deadline is April 27th. Early voting starts on May 18th. Houston listeners, the next episode of our In Progress Roundtable show will come to you this evening on the radio in the middle of a brand new Thursday afternoon block of progressive political programming. In Progress starts at 6:30 p.m. every Thursday evening on KPFT 90.1 FM after the Progressive Forum and before the midterm show with Ernest Wittring. And it runs a second time every Sunday morning at 11 on KPFT FM HD2. With your support, we hope to expand our radio footprint beyond Houston to the top 5 Texas media markets this year. Click the link in the show notes to make your tax-deductible donation to help us reach new audiences via Texas radio. And here at Progress Texas, Progressives, we're getting ready for our 16th anniversary celebration in Dallas with drinks, light bites, and a fun review of the highlights of our successes over the last few years. Save the date, which is Tuesday, June 16th, and see the link in the show notes to reserve your spot. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Thursday, April 2nd, 2026. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Our mission at Progress Texas is to improve and save Texans' lives by acting on our shared bold progressive values, and that starts with countering the billionaire and corporate-funded conservative disinformation machine. Progress Texas is an independent, nonprofit, rapid response media organization. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media in action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning.